Okay, so yeah, yesterday's video was a bit of a video, to say the least. So in today's video, what we're gonna do is we're gonna run the standard Xilonen DPS team. Now, I don't know the standard DPS team, if I'm being entirely honest. I think this is it, because Plunge, Xilonen is alright. So, yeah, let's go ahead and let's switch her over to Obsidian. Hopefully it's not going to look too bad. I'm pretty sure it looks pretty bad. I remember, I think, maybe. So here is my Obsidian Xilonen build. It's not awful for a character who doesn't have a crit weapon, right? I mean, she does, but, like, I don't know if, honestly, this is her best weapon still. I don't know if this is her best weapon still, if I'm being entirely honest. Like, I don't know. We're going to use Peak Patrol Song. I think it might be Chiori's weapon that is better, but... we'll be fine. We will. We'll survive with, just the standard, support weapon that Xilonen has. Okay, so one thing with the Xilonen Plunge is that the duration is a little weird because you can really screw yourself over if you're trying to do a fast amount of plunges because you lose so much damage per rotation overall there. And, the Night Soul drains so fast. However, if you just you don't press right click and try and cancel anything, then you don't have issues. Now, this is a workaround that you have to do with Night Soul. And I mean, that is something people can talk about, how Xilonen works and how it's not really that great. But let's go ahead. Let's start this off. And yeah, let's see how this works because Fiorina's at lower health, but nobody else is. So sure. All right, let's pop the Q. 80,000 there, and we missed on that. 120,000. So yeah, you kind of just have to keep doing this and just plunge, and yeah, we saw that. So not like totally awful, right? Let's be honest, it's not totally awful. However, what if you just didn't really do that and you were like, okay, well, let's pick a different thing to do, right? Let's go ahead and let's grab, instead of Sinyun, let's grab Yunjin, right? So this isn't necessarily a bad team, but it's also not great. Now, you can run triple Favonius on this team, which honestly is probably a good idea because Goro and Yunjin, not Sinyun, they have a pretty nasty amount of energy issues. Oh yeah, you can also run, defense polearm. Yeah, that do be a thing that you can run. But particularly Goro, you can have a lot of issues with Goro, and Goro is a pretty big part of the support here. We are going to get full 40% crit damage support here, which is pretty massive, right? That doesn't, fall off of trees. We don't have a healer here because Xilonen isn't acting as a healer and when she only has 3 GOs or, stuff. It's not, fantastic. Let's be real. Let's be real. Let's be 100 full realsies. And you can see 40,000, though, 50,000, it's not awful, right? Like, there are other, scenarios where, it can be worse. And you can see we're not really struggling for the duration. Now, obviously, you can see the damage fell off pretty hardly there. But it's not bad, right? Let's be real. It's not, like, incredibly, awful. But the Plunge team, it's very much so better. The Plunge team is better. Outright, there's nothing else you can say here. The Plunge team is better, and there's not really much else. I think the biggest hurdle is that Xilonen needs those 3 Geos or Animos, and in terms of Geo and Animo support, there isn't a lot. And the reason why I say there isn't a lot is because, well, Animo, they want to react with another element and buff that element with Viridescent, right? That's 90% of Animo characters, right? And Geo, well, their supports just suck. As simple as that. Like, all of their supports just kind of suck. There's not really a better way to say it. They just suck. So then you're kind of left with, well, you have these two. They work, right? If you're going to use double Geo, but if you want to use Sinyun, it works, right? And then you can run Goro or something, then you can run, like, Zhongli or something, right? You can have Zhongli get the, guaranteed, like, shield damage bonus and stuff. But other than that, who else are you running in terms of that Geo slot? Because you're not going to run a second Animo. A second Animo is basically never going to happen on a team, if I'm being entirely honest. Like, is there any current meta, like, team that would want a second? Well, yeah. Zhao's team, I guess, would be sort of where we're looking at that. So, yeah, not fantastic, right? I don't think it's fantastic, but I do think that, you know, certainly it works. And you like to have the DPS capabilities while you're also a very, very strong support. I do like that's basically it's kind of the inverse of Mavwika, right? Mavwika as a support really isn't a lot unless you want her pyro application, which then she's great. But if you're only really getting, like, you know, the 40% damage bonus out of Mavwika, not really that great. And her C2 helps with that, but not really a lot, right? Her C2, you know, gives you 10% damage, basically, is what it does. It's not bad, but compared to other supports, you know, like if you were looking at a C2 Fiorina versus C2 Mavwika for support, it's kind of like, well, yeah, there's that. And I think the main thing that Mavwika gives as a support is like her damage. And if you're doing C2 Mavwika as a support, she can easily do over 1 million damage if she's able to do reactions, right? Whereas Fiorina, she's more of so just like she's a little bit under that, I think, and she's only whereas Fiorina, she's a little bit under that. However, she is always doing that sort of damage, right? Because she's easily able to just do like she doesn't reactions, like she doesn't like get buffed off of reactions much because she applies so much hydro that her hits don't really react much. So overall, yeah, she's not amazing, but I do think that this character has a unique value for like newer players. Like if you're a newer player, being able to get this character as like a DPS, and then you can go ahead and you can shift her into a very strong support for your later DPS characters, I think that's a really good scenario, right? And, you know, newer players won't have Obsidian, right? They won't, like, have basically any 5-star artifacts, but her set is also attached to Obsidian, so when you do get to, like, the Obsidian domain, and maybe you are starting out with, you know, 5-star artifacts, and maybe you still don't necessarily have that 5-star DPS that you want, maybe Mulani hasn't rerun or something, and, you know, you're still sort of building towards that. If it's a Natlan, you know, DPS, you're getting basically a very good set. I mean, literally every single Natlan DPS right now wants Obsidian, which is insane, right? I do think that Xilonen is competent enough as a DPS. I would not use her in Abyss. Like, I think she's good. Like, if you're really desperate, you can use her in Abyss, but I think her support ability is just so strong that you just would never really want to truly do that. It really is just a simple, like, do you like the character? Maybe you want to try her as a DPS a little bit. And, you know, she certainly, I feel like, you know, she's okay, but not anything special. I mean, you were seeing, well, you guys weren't seeing that. I just recorded. But if you look back at yesterday's video, my Risley did over 2 million damage. And I mean, they're not that, like, far not invested into, right? Like, we look, I have C2 R1 Xilonen. I have C3 R1 Risley. That is where we're at with Risley. So it's only a 1 constellation difference, and that is just, the damage that the Risley team does is a lot more. And I think that's kind of where Xilonen falls, because, like, she can't take advantage of Mavwika now. So she is a character that was directly sort of hurt by that restriction of Geo. It would have been nice if she, like, you know, even if she capped out her Night Soul, she still, like, stayed in the defensive state. But that's luck behind C6, I'm pretty sure. You know, her C6 for 5 seconds, you can do all your stuff. Yeah, I think it's luck behind her C6. Overall, though, amazing character, and she's a decent DPS. Like, it's competent. I'll say competent, right? It's not, you know, I'm not going to look at that and be like, wow, but I will look at that and be like, okay, oh, okay, you know, because I know she's a support character. And that's a part of the reason why I'm like, okay, with Mavwika too, right? Because Mavwika, she's able to be a support and apply Pyro and also be the best DPS in the game, right? So, like, it really does feel sort of the same situation with Mavwika and Xilonen, where they're just inverted, right? Like, Xilonen is a better support, Mavwika is a better DPS, right? They're just inverted, and I think these two characters hold, like, a unique value to it. However, Mavwika kind of hurt because her Night Soul gimmick, right? So, you know, you can't give her too much value as a support, right? Because that's another thing, because mostly you're running her with Xilonen, but if you don't have Xilonen, I would not recommend summon for Mavwika as a support, unless you're using her for, like, you know, another character that's training Night Soul, obviously. But overall, though, yeah, I think it's okay. I think she's decently well. I'm not gonna, you know, look at this and be like, this is pretty bad. No, I don't think this is bad. I think this is okay, like, because she is just that good of a support, so I'll give her Like, even if she was, well, I wouldn't say she's worse. She's about the level where I would hope that she would end up at, honestly, because if she was worse, like unable to be run into Abyss comfortably, right? Well, it wouldn't be any more comfortable if she got worse, right? Obviously. So I don't think I would, you know, like, I don't know if I would go as far to say she could be a little worse and I'd still be okay with it. But I mean, you know, other support characters, right? They just don't even have any DPS capabilities, right? If I'm running Kazuha, I'm not if this man is my DPS, I've made a mistake in building the team. That's what I've done. Because like it's just like using Kachina over this guy as the DPS is better. Legitimately, it is probably better to use Kachina as this guy instead of this guy as the DPS, because you're not building this guy. You know, I mean, you can build him for physical damage, but you know, you're just making a massive mistake if you do. So yeah, overall, Xilonen DPS, it's okay, but I'm not gonna go any further than that, right? It's okay, it's passable due to how good she is as a support, and she does hold a unique value for like newer players, again, because she's able to be that support, she's able to be that DPS when you need her to, and like newer players should value that a lot, because being able to, you know, use this character as support later on when you get better teams is pretty massive. Because, you know, if we go ahead and we're like, oh, Zhao, right? Let's look at Zhao. I got this guy. Everyone was basically a new player when this guy dropped. I got this guy, and I did not use this guy for like 3 years. That will not happen with Xilonen. If you get this girl, and she is like, you know, if you get her and, you know, you use her as a DPS for your beginning stages, it's not like this character is going to drop off the face of the map. You're going to end up just using her as support to support that next DPS character. So I do think that this character holds a very, very high value for the newer players. And yeah, overall, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.